Hey, good morning. Welcome to What's the Message? How are you all doing? I'm so glad that you dropped by today because today is all the good things wrapped up into one. Baron Savory, how you doing? I was out in your neck of the woods last week. What's going on?
Hey, look, we were glad to have you. We're glad that you made a trip out to the West Coast. I'm doing fantastic. I'm doing great. It is good to see you. Glad to have each and every one of you out there. Do us a favor while you're watching right now. Just hop on your phone real quick and share with others that What's the Message is live right now. We have a great show in store for you today. Some great things to talk about. Carmela, get us started off. What are we going to talk about today?
Wow, Baron, it's been an eventful week, and I know we want to comment on a couple of things. But first, I was watching this story about this young man who fell to his death on an amusement park ride, and which saddens me so. Did you see that?
Yeah, I saw it. And when I saw the age of the young man, I mean, really, okay, anybody who is going to a place to have amusement and something tragic like this happens, it's heartbreaking in so many ways. But prayers go out to his family and all of his friends that knew him. That place will never have the same effect on them. They'll always remember what happened to their friend there.
I know, that, and especially that ride. The thing is that the whole question is going to be, what were the safety precautions that were put in place, and were they somehow skipped? And I know that part of this, and this is a very real thing. Your size, can you fit into the thing safely and be taken care of? And so it's kind of a sensitive subject because you're like, we're not trying to blame the victim in any way. I just want people to be protected in every way. And so, I don't know how you navigate that, but this poor young man, in the sense that he lost his life, was there with friends. What would you do if you were his parents? I don't know, but I would just be so heartbroken to see that, like you said, at a joyous and happy time for this person in his life, this is what's going to happen.
Yeah, and I can remember even as a young person when you so excited and you go and you stand up next to that little height meter and you find out you're still just a little bit too short and you're crestfallen, but it's there for a reason to try to keep you safe. And then you just kind of got to fit within those protocols. But once again, heart just broken, goes out to that family. And hopefully it never happens again. I've been on a ride. Have you ever been on a ride like that? I've been on one like that.
I have. It is not funny. It is not. And I have made my determination that, number one, I will not be doing that again. I will not be doing that again. I didn't need this. When I was a young reporter, I covered a story at the New York State Fair where a piece of the Ferris wheel, if you think of the Ferris wheel as like a pie, a piece of the side of the pie fell off, hitting people on the ground. I was like, I've never been a fan of this kind of stuff. Anyway, like you said, the bottom line is our prayers, our hearts go out to this family, for this poor youth that is cut down in the prime of his life. Everybody's been talking about all week. And believe me, on my way into work this morning, we're talking about Chris Rock and Will Smith. What is the definitive word? Come on. What is the definitive word, Baron Savory?
Oh my goodness. You're gonna try to put that. I mean,
I'm putting it on you.
Everybody is, as a matter of fact, you tell me, get in the comments right now and you tell me where you stand on this issue. I mean, there's so many things that are happening here in this particular story. You have a comedian who is doing what he has always done, which it hurts sometimes. Sometimes, I mean, you've had friends and you've been hanging out and you've been eating food and your friend says something insensitive to you and it's not funny to you, but everyone else starts laughing and then they're like, oh, wait a minute, you don't think it's funny anymore. But then you have a very real, serious health condition that's happening. You have the way that men are expected to protect the ones that they love, particularly their wives or their children, when someone makes something insensitive about a health challenge. I don't know if Chris Rock knew in advance. Some people say, how could he not know? I'll tell you that I'm in the camp because I'm not always
I
on
didn't
the
know.
entertainment news. I had
Yeah,
no idea that
I
she
didn't
had
know. Yeah,
alopecia, and I know that there's many different varying hairstyles, to
yeah.
which a completely shaved head could be one of them. But I mean, y'all let me know. How do you
Let
all?
us know.
I
Yeah.
listen. Okay, I'm gonna go out here, Carmela. I'm gonna go out here. Will Smith was wrong to go up there in that moment and
Mm-hmm.
assault Chris Rock. I
Yeah.
understand that he was upset and angry about it, because I would be mad too. Okay, all right. I put it
You
out
said
there.
it.
What do
You
you
said
think?
it. Okay, look, everybody, I need, because we're going to follow up on this between message and all of our platforms, because I think there's a lot of stuff to say
For sure.
about the expectation. Do women expect that of their men? I had this conversation with my husband this week in particular. Is this something that is a cyclical kind of thing? You disrespect me, I got to disrespect you. I think there are some deeper issues that we need to explore, not to mention the fact that both of these people, I believe, came from a sense that, maybe they're not the people who, the hardened, so-called stereotypical people who are about that life. You know what I mean? And so I think
Mm-hmm.
it really came across as awkward and ultimately hurting and damaging. Look, we got to move on. Please let me know what you think about this. I would like to be able to cover this and discuss this more with
Yeah.
message on the platform of message. But
True.
as we go on and we prepare to bring on our special guest, I just need to know, I'm a vegan. I've been plant-based for several years, but I'm gonna tell you, the joke in our family was that for a while we were going to McDonald's so much when my children were little, that my children, when we'd sit in the drive-through line, they'd be like, "God is great. God is good." I'm so sorry that that's the kind of mom I am. So let's talk about, have you ever thought about the role of McDonald's and the African American community, Baron?
You know what? I really, to be honest with you, growing up and being a huge fan of the NBA in the 90s, you just
Mhm.
couldn't miss McDonald's. I mean,
Yeah.
Michael Jordan, those fries. And let me tell you, there wasn't much on the menu growing
Mhm.
up a vegetarian myself. Now,
Yeah.
now I'm aspiring to reach your levels at this point. I,
I don't
I'm
know.
I'm working at it. But I tell you, nothing beat the French fries.
Yes, no,
Nothing
no.
at all. And I tried a few times. Let me go ahead and get that Big Mac without
Yeah.
meat. It didn't go over
It,
well.
no.
But I can tell you this: to all beef patties, special sauce, lettuce, cheese, pickles, onions on a sesame seed bun. Okay, all
No,
right.
no
So
advertising McDonald's right here, because I have a complicated relationship with McDonald's, which is
yeah,
why we're bringing on our guest. And I want to go ahead and introduce her right now, because this is our privilege and our honor. We told her backstage, we don't even know you and we are proud of you. But I want to bring on Dr. Marsha Chatlin, who is a professor of history and African American studies at Georgetown University in Washington, D.C. Of course, she's a proud native of Chicago, Illinois, and attended the University of Missouri, Columbia, where she received her bachelor's degree in journalism and religious studies. This is going to be good, y'all. Chatlin also attended Brown University and received her master's and PhD in American civilization. A scholar of African American life and culture, Chatlin is the recipient, get this, of the 2021 Pulitzer Prize in History. Her winning text, Franchise, you see it there on the screen, The Golden Arches in Black America, examines the civil rights struggle and the rise of the fast food industry in African American communities and the role of Black capitalism. Dr.
mhm.
Chatlin, thank you so much for joining us today. And we're just honored that you are in the house. We don't get to roll with Pulitzer Prize winning people at
I mean,
any
that is
point.
huge.
This is huge. And before we get into McDonald's, I got a couple of questions that I think is just so amazing. Your history, your background, your studies, very interesting. And we just found out that you're a new mom. So talk to us, first of all, from the the historian in you, besides talking about fast food and the fast food industry, you're interested in the history of girlhood, and some of your work has explored that. And coming off of Women's History Month, this is very interesting to us. And so, how did you make the Great Migration come alive by studying girlhood? And why is studying girlhood important to you?
Well, thank you, team message. This is so fun. I've only been with you a few minutes, and I wanted to like break in on the previous topics about
Well,
the amusement parks
if
and
you
all
have
the.
something that you need to say and
You
weigh
know,
in as a
Please.
historian, go ahead.
let me say, well, the first thing, amusement parks are a wonderful place to study the history of segregation and the history of childhood.
Yes.
As many of us know, the important story that Martin Luther King Jr. talks about, his daughter not being able to go to Funtown in Atlanta because of the
Mm,
color of her skin, that, amusement parks have long been one of those places that people have really struggled to get included in. And anytime we have resources that are for children and for the delight of childhood that is barred, because of race, they always have a lot of weight. And it's such a tragedy when these accidents happen
yeah.
at this type of venue. But that's also part of the history of struggle, which is something that is so important for me as someone from Chicago who wants to write about
Hmm.
the people you see off the screen. And girls and young women participated in the Great Migration.
Yeah.
They worked and gave money to their families, and so it's so important
Mhm.
for us to remember that children also make history, that they're part of the story.
Yeah.
As for the Oscars, you know what? Listen, I was up all night with my son. He was sick. I didn't know what happened. I looked at my phone. My text messages blew up, and I was like, "What's happening? Does someone have a check for me?"
Mhm.
I
Yeah.
was
The
like,
only reason.
but here's what I think, and this is the part that is complicated and hard.
Hmm.
I think what happened, if we look at all of the video evidence, was that Will Smith kind of laughed at the joke, saw how upset his wife was, and then was filled with a lot of shame and rage. He
Mm.
was ashamed that he had kind of not taken it seriously. And then I think he was enraged with Chris Rock, not just for being disrespectful, but for
Mm.
putting him in a situation that he
Mm.
let his wife down. And I think
Yeah.
he overreacted because of it. I get it.
Mm.
I think for any of us who are in any close relationship, whether it's a friendship, whether it's our families, whether it's an intimate relationship or with our kids, like there are moments where we let people down, and we need to find a way to confront that. And I think he just kind of lost it. And you know what, though? Happens to all of us.
Yeah.
Um, you know, Sometimes I think about the Williams sisters a lot because these
Mm.
two Black women, their worst day at work, everybody's always watching. And I
Yes.
think of this as Will Smith's worst day at work
Yes, it
that
was.
also was his best day at work. And sometimes it'd be like that. And I
Yeah.
think for the Williams sisters, when they were going off on Venus and Serena, and that, a few years, I think at the US Open, Serena was so upset.
Hmm.
And that line judge was like saying that she was cheating. And she was just like, you know what? This is what you're not going to do.
Yeah.
That we've all been there, and so I think that everyone deserves grace in that situation, but I think we need to be very clear about sometimes we're acting out, and it's not because of what someone else has done, it's because of the ways that we've kind of let ourselves down. So let me stop talking about these
Oh
people.
no, that's full of conflict of, the inner work is what you're talking about.
Yeah.
The internal voice and conviction that he was working on. I
Yeah.
love that. You're right. Go on,
And that,
Ramon. I didn't mean to interrupt.
No. I love that perspective and
Mhm.
the idea that there's some people in some positions you get to see their best day at work and sometimes their absolute worst day. And the one thing that we all have to keep in mind here is a
Mhm.
little bit of grace in the midst of all of this as
Yeah.
well. But I know that there's for as two-dimensional or three-dimensional as it seems, there are many sides to this, and there are many things.
100%.
And I look forward to hearing more from both sides about this whole experience and how it unfolds in the minds in their careers and in our communities and the world as a whole. So
Yeah.
And
yeah.
I think it relates to my work as a historian.
Yes.
For so much of the building of Black history, there was a generation that I think felt a lot of pressure to write Black history as all heroes, all virtue, all strength, all, everybody was trying to liberate enslaved people. Everyone was trying to fight for civil rights. And I think the reality is, and what's compelling about history, is that people are sometimes placed in positions where they're making negotiations, they're making choices they don't love, they're fighting for their survival in ways that we would judge or say, they were on the wrong side of history. But I tell my students this all the time. We know how the story ends. They didn't know.
They didn't know.
And, in my most recent book, Franchise, I'm talking about Black people in McDonald's. And it's not a story of the heroes of, Black America who get to franchise McDonald's and become rich and then they help their people. And it's not about people selling out necessarily. It's about the fact that for us, the window is always cracked. So there's like this much space. And it's like, how are we going to get to that other side? And what are the tough decisions we make? And, this is the story of how Black people got into McDonald's franchising, not just because they saw it as a business opportunity, but it was presented to them as this incredible life-changing moment where they could enrich themselves, maybe lift up their community. But people weren't thinking about the health implications. And people weren't thinking about low-wage work and some of the nefarious issues that come with the fast food industry. I tell my students, like, for a Black person in 1969 to be told by McDonald's, you can open a McDonald's franchise, is equivalent to if Mark Zuckerberg texted me right now and was like, Marsha, you are going to own Facebook. It wouldn't even make it. It literally would make no sense to me. I couldn't even conceptualize that wealth and that kind of power. And that's what fast food presented to Black people in the late 1960s.
Yes. I love the way you say that right now, because that is exactly my observation. And no, I am nowhere. I'm not in your classroom. And so I don't know how you are teaching this nuance, but you're right. When I think about McDonald's and I'm reading through the text here, I'm up and down. I'm like, well, is she for them? What is she saying? Is this good? Oh, no, this is definitely bad. No, this might be good. So talk to me about this, because as I'm reading, it is difficult to hear and to read about the cultivation of this taste for fast food, the molding of this kind of habit in society. And so I guess I am asking that question. Is your point that McDonald's and similar food chains are not responsible for the unhealthiness in our food deserts? Or is your point that we have no idea the complexity that is at work that sets McDonald's up in our food deserts?
I think when I approached this work, everyone was like, are you going to write a takedown of McDonald's? Or are you going to wag your finger at Black people for eating value meals? Who's the villain? And I'm like, honestly, if we really want to say who the villain is, it's capitalism and racism. But, but we imagine that we can say it's this person or that person. And so what I'm trying to unfold is that, for many years, I would listen to people who were in the food justice movement, talk to them. And there was a tone that they took when they talked about Black people in fast food that I didn't appreciate.
Okay.
And that tone was like, how can people let their kids eat this? Or don't people know better? You'll talk to doctors and public health practitioners who'll say, well, don't those people know that kale is better than French fries? And I was like, everybody needs to just take a step back, and we need to understand two things.
Yes.
When it comes to our communities, particularly McDonald's, it's about more than just the food.
Okay.
It's about a kind of cultural alignment. It's the back to school parades in Chicago. It's the Black franchise owners' scholarship programs for their crews. It's the money that they've poured into HBCUs and the NAACP AXO Awards and the United Negro College Fund. It's about bringing Michael Jordan into commercials in the 90s, which was a big deal, even though he was a big star. It was having the commercial with Patti LaBelle. It was, the commercial that has stepping in it. All of those things matter. And so what I was trying to uncover is, how does a fast food brand implant itself in a community so it's more than just the food? And what are the consequences for then communities that have their choices limited in terms of their power to determine what businesses come in and out. And what does this mean for us when we find ourselves saying support Black business, support Black business, support Black business to do what exactly?
Yeah.
Because from my perspective, Black business isn't the problem. It's a federal government that has left people behind. You know, this is such a hard conversation to have sometimes because, you know, after the George Floyd uprising, we heard all these people saying, we want to support Black business.
Right.
We want to support Black creators. You couldn't go anywhere. You know, I go on crateandbarrel.com. They're talking about we support Black. I'm like, Crate and Barrel, you're doing a lot there.
Yeah.
I thought you were trying to sell furniture.
Right.
But the point is that even if Crate and Barrel hires every Black furniture maker to stock their stores, that doesn't stop the police from brutalizing us. That doesn't make our schools better. That doesn't get lead out of our water. I think what happened in the late 1960s is that people were asking for very clear pathways to justice. And what the federal government conspired to do with corporate America is to say, oh, you just want businesses. Oh, that's what you want. And so that mismatch puts us in this really awkward position because I want Black businesses to do well, but I don't expect Black businesses to do the work that our social safety net should be doing to really repair and heal communities. And I think McDonald's was in the center of that from the late 60s, even to the present.
Yeah. As a historical, this kind of franchise in and of itself, you know, I actually grew up in San Bernardino, which plays a huge role in its start. There, McDonald's, the franchise, and I can remember as a young teenager hearing about the McDonald's Gospel Fest and how that was a huge thing, how they integrated into not just the sports industry, but also into churches and
very much
into these things and sponsoring to help do things that, you know, really there just wasn't either the vision or the capital to make happen. How do we now at this point where we have a real interest in the health of the individual, the health of the Black community, historically looking at a franchise like McDonald's that is looking to try to give it to them so that there's wealth? Let me ask this question. Has there been a trickle down impact, positive impact from Black owners of McDonald's back into Black communities, or have you seen or discovered through your research that it purely has benefited their capitalistic gain, and now they're saying, hey, look, I climbed over this fence, you figure it out?
You know, it has always been to the benefit of Black communities when Black businesses do well because of the lack of capital. And that is both the blessing and the curse. You know, some of the Black franchise owners I had a chance to meet when working on the book, you know, these people are not only, you know, incredibly philanthropic, you know, the largest gifts to HBCUs, many of them were made by franchise owners. You know, you have scholarship programs, you have, you know, things like the gospel tour. Those are really important. But at what cost?
Yeah.
And it becomes really complicated because I met this woman who was a manager, a Black woman manager at a Black-owned McDonald's in the Dallas area. And she said, look, when people come in and they check that box that they have a felony conviction, I'll still hire them. You know, they can find a place here. When people are turning their backs on, you know, some of these individuals seeking work, I'll give them a chance. And that's so important. But I want her to be able to give them a chance, but I also want them to make a living wage. I want her to open that door, but I want them to not worry about healthcare access or paid sick leave or where their kids are after school because there's not childcare. And so I think part of the problem is that we can't rise and fall based on the benevolence or the success of a business. We rise and fall based on our ability to take care of each other. And so, you know, yes, there's been trickle down benefits, but it comes at a really high price, not only health-wise, but in the conditions of workers and the industry as a whole.
First, one quick question. Do you consider McDonald's a Black business if it's a franchise owner? Is that a Black business? It never occurred to me to support McDonald's as in terms of Black businesses.
So this is a huge, huge issue of contention as McDonald's was expanding in Black communities. You know, it's so interesting, to think about a time where McDonald's wasn't McDonald's, right? Where it was a newer franchise and it was still trying to gain the trust and market loyalties of communities. So in the late 60s or early 70s, some places like Chicago, they really opened their arms in the community to McDonald's being Black owned. And that was considered such a symbol of power and respect. But in places like Cleveland, McDonald's was doing really well, but they were like, wait a second, but they're Black franchise owners. We as a community need to decide who's going to make money off of this. And then other places were like, this isn't really a Black owned business. And what you find in the 70s is that there are these copycat franchises. Some of them were real janky, where they were trying to say, no, we're actually authentically Black. So you have people like Mahalia Jackson and Muhammad Ali, Sammy Davis Jr. Everyone's trying to lease their name and likeness to say we're the really Black brand. And even those brands weren't really Black owned. And so I think what's interesting also, over on Georgia Avenue in Washington, D.C., the famous Howard University McDonald's, they had a sign out that's saying we are Black owned business. They are one of 47 McDonald's locations that's franchised by a Black family. Are they a Black owned business? I guess kind of, but at the end of the day, the real estate, the supply chain for that McDonald's, the equipment supply, a lot of that is not in the hands of Black business.
Yeah.
So today, if you're just joining us, we're talking with Dr. Marsha Chatlin, who is a Pulitzer Prize winning author for the book Franchise. We're so glad that you joined us today. It leads me into a question that I have about this idea, not only of franchise ownership, but really just kind of where exactly do we go looking forward? Recently, McDonald's was sued because they want the Black dollar. They certainly want that, but they don't want to advertise in it, and they're actually being sued about that. I know that you've written historically about it, but can you give me a little bit of a window? Because when I began to read a little bit about those numbers, I actually was not excited about that, a little upset. But can you tell me a little bit about the whole advertising thing and still wanting the dollars?
So I think this was a lawsuit that was filed by Byron Allen on behalf of his many media properties. You know what? Byron Allen stays paid. Like, do you remember him back in the day? He used to have those shows late at night where he would interview celebrities. And you're just like, who is this guy? And then you realize dude's been in the game a long time. And so he did a major acquisition of different media properties. And he sued McDonald's and saying, you're not bringing advertising dollars to these, communications networks. And this has been an interesting thing because for many years, McDonald's was considered the leader in Black advertising, in, that deep marketing to Black communities. And then, there's an argument that over the past 20 years, they kind of dropped off. And I think what has happened I think they felt like they had the Black consumer dollar. They didn't have to invest more. I think the other part is that the field is so much more crowded because now we have the category of fast casual. There's a lot of very good food cheap that McDonald's is not the automatic consumer choice that it used to be. And especially among like teenagers or people who have a little bit more money to spend on food, they'll go to a Chipotle, they'll go to, some of this fast casual stuff. So there's that. The idea of how much money McDonald's puts into Black communities always becomes an issue when like lawsuits come up. And so what has traditionally been the move, and it's not just McDonald's, a lot of corporations, especially in the 80s and 90s, they would get into these conflicts and they say, okay, we're going to settle this. We'll get you more franchisees. We'll hire more Black advertising and marketing firms. We'll deposit money in Black banks. We'll get some insurance policies from Black-owned insurance companies. We'll try to keep this moving. I think part of the problem now is social media gives them a lot of free marketing opportunities. So, all of the brands, Wendy's, Arby's, they basically are parroting Black social media voice. They're talking about dragging people and they're talking about, our fries are everything. That is a whole new world. But what happened in the advertising and communication sector is you used to have these Black-owned advertising companies. They were either acquired Or the white-owned companies were like, well, why don't we just hire some Black talent and we can produce the same content in our larger firms? So that kind of concentration of Black-owned communication professionals, that has changed a lot as well. And
Mhm.
so McDonald's has never really seen the inside of a courtroom on these racial discrimination lawsuits. There will probably be some type of settlement, and they
Mhm.
will make a commitment to that marketing. But again, where does that actually take people?
Right, right. That takes me to the next question, which I was having a hard time even formulating the question. Given what you have seen, what you explored, as we look back and everything, and given the complexity of the issues surrounding McDonald's, what would you say? What would you say to the social justice, health, environmental
Mhm.
justice movements that would be more effective? Because you mentioned in the book, and that it is historical, that you would get this trade-off. Oh, you want this, we'll put you, we'll give you this, we'll build this for you, we'll make sure you have access to this, but it doesn't really get at the heart of the issue. And you kind of alluded to that right now. So what is it that these movements could do better and more sensitively, that could be effective in the long run for the uplift of the folks?
Yeah, for people who are who are concerned with health and wellness, I
Mhm.
say, take a really big picture structural look and start, chiseling away at those structures that are obstructing people from having not only access to quality food,
Mhm.
but jobs in which to secure that food,
Yeah.
utilities at a rate where they can afford to keep that food cold and to cook it,
Mm.
time on in jobs where people can take care of their families and their communities and still have time to cook. And then think about how people are having access to time off, public places to hang out, parks, all of that stuff.
Mhm.
So think about the society in which making what we call, good food choices is possible,
Yeah.
because you can't make the best choices for you if you have limited options, time, resource, and,
Mhm.
so much stress. And so we
Mm.
have to think of big picture so that we don't say, well, this person made the wrong choice for getting an extra value meal. We say, well, what are the things in this person's life where the extra value meal is actually the smartest choice they could make at this moment, and
Yeah.
then work backwards.
Interesting.
Dr. Chatlin, this is just, I mean, an amazing historical document that you have written about McDonald's. Obviously, you spent some time researching business ownership, business owners. I'm wondering if just for a moment, you could just open up for just a second to those that may be watching today that are interested, maybe not specifically in food franchise ownership, but just what it means to step out, to be Black in America, to want to be an owner of a business,
Mhm.
Mhm.
and speak about that. And then also, I mean, you are a highly educated teaching a professor there at Georgetown and whatnot. Can you just talk to those out there about being a woman, going out there, doing your thing, being successful? Just pour some hope into the folks and that are looking to do some great things in their life.
Well, I think the first thing, for people who are interested in business, I think you have to have reasonable expectations of what your business can and can't do.
Mm.
Black-owned businesses are under so much pressure to support local communities, to
Mhm.
create jobs, to do, be part of this. I think that
Mhm.
we have to be very clear. My business can do this really well,
Mhm.
and I need to take some of my energy to advocate for the political candidates and the political movements that can take care of the society that supports my business.
Mm.
If some of these major corporations, all the lobbying that they do to try to suppress the minimum wage, if they took
Mhm.
all those energies to try to get healthcare for all, or
Yeah.
free college, or
Mhm.
better public schools, they would find greater returns for their workers because people wouldn't be stretched so thin. So
Mhm.
that's the first thing, like, understand what your business can and can't do. I think a lot of Black people think, I'm going to get into business so I don't have to deal with the racism at work anymore. Well, you're going to find it at the bank. Or
Yes.
I'm going to have a business for my people so people can respect and, appreciate me. Some people will and some people won't. So you really
Mhm.
have to kind of balance that. And, in terms of my journey, I mean, it is a mixed bag. Every year, like, I've had this incredible year, with my new child and winning the Pulitzer Prize. Every year you don't get this kind of fortune, and I understand that. And for the years where this kind of fortune was not made real to me, I always try to remain as grateful as possible. I think the one thing I will say, there have been moments in my career where I was like, well, I don't know how we're going to do this, whether it was in graduate school or, publishing my first book. I've had some real challenges. And the thing that always got me on the other side of it was I was always honest about what was going on. Like, this is why this hasn't happened. This is the support that I need. I think the clearer we are and the risk we take by telling people, you know what, I'm going through it. This is what I need for you to help me, or can you point me to someone who can help me? The better we are, because I think as Black women, it's so hard to fail in front of other people. It's so hard to have that bad day at work in front of other people, but it happens. And, you need to have me on the show next time, tell me all the bad days that I had. But I always had people around me who I could say, all right, this happened. How are we going to get on the other side of this?
Yeah, we definitely not walking around slapping nobody on TV.
Look,
but,
listen.
Although there have been times,
there have been times, it can happen to any of us. It can happen to any of us.
But okay, but we're gonna let you go, and this is the last thing that I'll ask. Talk to us. How does you were just talking about how you get through it through gratitude, through I guess it's sort of like the longitudinal viewpoint. Maybe that helps you to be a historian, to realize that what they used to say in the day, trouble don't last always, you know what I mean? But talk to me, how does your religious studies, your faith sort of inform your life, your research, your career?
Yeah, I mean, I always had a praying mama. I mean, my mother prays for everything.
Hallelujah.
Big and small. We were with my son this morning. We took him on a walk and we got home and she said, thank you, Jesus, that I had that time. I mean, it's minute by minute, second by second. And I think having that model of gratitude, it's interesting. My mother's faith is something, something epic, something that, a million books should be written about. But one of the things that I've always been really grateful for, growing up in communities where people always really saw themselves as having an abundance of spirit and the ability to serve, no matter what they had kind of financially or how much power they had. And, that is just an incredible model.
Yeah.
Someone being able to say that, like, what else do I have to give? When I first started my career, I thought about all of the things that I could go for, what could be given to me. And then I got to an age where every time I talk to a student, I can say, well, how can I be of service to you? It's the blessings are overflowing at this point. I was like, don't give me nothing anymore. What can I pour out? And I think that always remembering that no matter where we are, we have something to pour out has saved my life. It really has.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Look,
Thank
you all, we are just, we are honored and privileged, like I said, to just be talking to Dr. Marsha Chatlin, the author and Pulitzer Prize winning author of Franchise. And I need you all to go ahead and get it, The Golden Arches in Black America. This is not just an exposition or exploration and research about McDonald's. This is McDonald's and history. This takes goes into in depth so many different developments of our lifetime or undergirding our institutions. And so I'm just hats off to you for this marvelous work, and thank you. And we just going to be lifting you up from now on. So thank you for joining us for What's the Message. Look, it's always a good conversation,
always a good
deep conversation. You walk away from here feeling smart. You just got schooled by a Pulitzer Prize winning Georgetown professor in history. Am I right? Come on now.
Hey, listen, you're right about it. You're right about it. We learned, and listen, we could have talked for another 30 minutes, and you heard her. She said, you got to bring me back to talk about some other things that happened in life. And we might just need to make that happen.
Yes, indeed. So look, thank you all for joining us. Please don't forget to follow us on all of the platforms, both Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter. And don't forget to go on to messagemagazine.com even now, where you can sign up, not just you, but you can share the love with your friends and your family and your community by signing up for subscriptions, both digital and or the print edition. Don't forget our brothers and sisters who are incarcerated and do not have access to people on a regular basis, especially now. Ever since COVID hit, so many people or so many programs have been shut down and people don't have that access coming in and out. You can be that access by sharing with people a good word through Message. So messagemagazine.com, put down the local facility near you, and then join us next week. I'm on the road. I'm on the road again today, and I'll be in Oakland, California for Media Day, talking about the Black press with Paul Cobb out there in an independent Black newspaper at Oakland Market Street SDA Church. So if you're out there, come and say hi. Baron, you got anything else?
Man, look, I'm just so grateful that we just have such great conversations. I'm praying that you have safe travels. We're just so grateful for each and every one of you that are tuning in. Do us a favor. You heard all the platforms and all the places that you can find Message.
Yes.
Link up with us. We'd love to have you and be able to share even more about what we're doing here on What's the Message and with Message Magazine.
Oh, all right. See you next time. Bye-bye.